the #1 long-form writer that helps SEOs outrank competition at the click of a button using real-time research and NLP. Start ranking content today with content@scale.ai.
Wix Studio, one end-to-end web creation platform for your agency to deliver exceptional work with absolute efficiency.
Hi everyone. I work for OBAN International. We're a digital marketing agency based here in Brighton, and we specialize in helping companies do better digital marketing internationally. And one of the ways we do that is localizing content, keyword research, a lot of the stuff Suk's just been talking about. But we also have to fix things on the technical side. And actually, one of the things that new clients talk to us about first is often their frustration with Hreflang. Also in the training, international SEO training we do as part of Brighton SEO, a lot of people come with questions about Hreflang, because as far as they're concerned, they fixed everything, it should be working, but Google seemed to be ignoring it. There's a lot of reasons why that could be, so we're going to go through the 8 things you need to check today. But very quickly before we go into how to do those 8 checks, why do you even need Hreflang in the first place? So we've got a nice example here. So this is searching in Mexico with Spanish set as your browser language. And the top result here is Amazon.com, the US website. And that's showing at the top, whereas what should be showing is this Amazon.com.mx Prime Day result. And the reason that it's not is because Amazon, despite being as big as they are, often have problems with their Hreflang. And that's a problem because Google will often just try and guess if you don't tell them which languages and which countries each page is relevant to. And that's what Hreflang is for. Often pages which have a lot of link equity, have really good click-through rates historically, will show up where they shouldn't be. The other problem, if you don't have Hreflang, is that you potentially have a problem with duplicate content. What you shouldn't do is have canonical tags between all the different versions of a page, because then only one of them is ever going to show. That's not what you want to do. But you need Hreflang to tell Google why you have duplicates of a page, particularly when they're in the same language but for different markets, right? But most of all, I think this is a UX issue, because user experience is pretty poor if you're only seeing a result in the wrong language, not aimed at your country, or if you do click on it, then you're going to have a much lower conversion rate because users don't want to mess around trying to find the right page. And also, you do get a bit of a boost if you have Hreflang clusters. So I'm not sure how much people know about how Hreflang tags work, and today's talk's not really about that, but basically, within a cluster, you will have groups of what should be ostensibly the same pages, which will link to each other with the Hreflang tags and say, okay, I'm the version for English in the US, for example. Over there is the version in Spanish for Mexico. Over there is the version in Spanish for Spain, and so on. Now, if you add a new page to that cluster, and you've got some pages that are already performing very well, Google can understand, okay, well, yeah, this page you already got for the US, it's got lots of link equity, it's ranking really well. So if you've got a new page, which is for the UK, I should definitely start showing that more quickly. Right, so what are those 8 things you need to check? And there's 8 things to check, but there's actually 25 issues. But if I'd said 25 Hreflang checks, then maybe some of you wouldn't have come along, because that just seems like too many. But a lot of them are quite simple things to check and spot, and relatively easy to fix. But let's start off with just getting the tags right in the first place. And this is, where a lot of people fall down. There's a lot of common mistakes that we see again and again. So you have to have the right codes within these tags. That's 2-letter language codes and 2-letter country codes that come from these international standard lists of codes. You can't make up codes, you can't use codes from anywhere else, but people do. And you have to have language first and then country. You can have just language, but you have to have language and country if you have both. So GBEN would not be right. It needs to be ENGB if you're targeting English speakers in the UK, for example. Then we've got the problem of people targeting places that aren't countries. There's a couple of places like Hong Kong, which does have a code and isn't a country as such, but a lot of the time we see people using the 2-letter US state codes instead. So people try and target California with CA, and they end up targeting Canada instead, for example. And then there's things like Wales, and unfortunately, I'm not sure if there's any Welsh people here, but I'm sorry, Wales isn't a country. Neither Scotland, neither England, neither Northern Ireland were all part of the UK, and so that's got a code. Wales doesn't. And also, yeah, people try and use languages that aren't supported. Not every single language ever is in this list, so I'm not sure if we've got any Scottish people in, so sorry, Scottish people, but Scots, there's no code for. And then, of course, people try and use tags just with the country and they don't include a language. You can have a language on its own, you can't have a country on its own. Which should be fine because every page has a certain language, right? So there's no reason not to have that. So let's look at some examples. Talib's already been talking about Arabia, so you should be able to tell me what is wrong. So this is a website targeting Arabic speakers across the Arabic-speaking world. And we have the code here, ARAR. Can anyone just shout out answers of what you think might be wrong with that one? Exactly. AR is not a country, at least it's not Arabia. It is a code for a country, but that country is Argentina. And apparently only 2% of Argentines speak Arabic. So if you use ARAR, you're going after a very limited market there. And what about this one? So I think we can all agree Austria is a country, right? No one disagrees with that. So we've got a code here, ATAT. Yeah, should be DE. DE is what most Austrian speakers their first language. This is an ATAT. ATAT, not a valid Hreflang code, I'm afraid. So some other common mistakes. Formatting you have to get right. Often we see people put alternative instead of alternate. You need to use absolute URLs, not relative or root relative, so we need to have the domain in. So these are ones that are correct. And also people often get confused where you have a related country and language where they don't have the same code, so people assume. So sometimes they do, so ES-ES is Spanish for Spain, but sometimes they don't match. So we're going to do a little quiz now about what we've been through so far. Just shout out answers. If you get it right, just give yourself a pat on the back. No prizes, I'm afraid. So what's wrong with this one? ENUK. Yes, GB should be. Yeah, if you're listening, you'd have got that one. So good. What are we trying to target here then? UK-UK. What do you reckon we're trying to target here? Is this valid? So that was actually wrong. If you want to target Ukrainians speaking Ukrainian, it's UK-UA. So UK for Ukrainian, UA for Ukraine. So this is exactly the kind of thing that confuses people. Here's a few more, so you can probably guess vaguely what's wrong with them, but can anybody tell me what the right language codes for these should be? Yeah, JA for Japanese, DA for Denmark, and SV for Swedish. Well done, yes. There we go. So we've gone through some of the most common mistakes, and I think all of those ones so far are quite understandable. And then there's just the plain stupid mistakes as well, which you really shouldn't be making, but again, people are making. First of all, just using non-indexable URLs. For whatever reason, they're non-indexable. All the URLs you're using in your Hreflang should be pages that can actually be indexed. Also come across issues with single-page applications. So recently I was looking at an e-commerce site and used the language selector on this site and the language updates on the page, but then the URL stays the same. So there's no URL to add to the Hreflang, so that's problematic as well. The language does need to match the content. Google can tell what language a site's in, so if you're just telling it completely the wrong thing, it's just going to lose trust in you. And then using home pages or other generic pages, this is something we see quite often. So within a cluster, they do need to be ostensibly the same page. You shouldn't just say, okay, well, I don't have a page for this country and language, so I'm just going to mention the home page instead. So yeah, you need to be mapping together related pages. They can be localized, they can be written by different people, but they need to be basically on the same topic. Okay, so once we've checked that the codes, the tags are actually valid, we need to look out for whether we've got any missing tags. And the biggest problem usually is missing return tags, where you've got some tags pointing from one URL, but the other URLs aren't replying. So here we've got the UK and the US page. They're being very polite. They're saying, yep, there's the UK page, there's the Danish page over there. And then we're going to the Danish page, and Google's saying to the Danish page, right, okay, so you're the Danish page for Denmark, right? And yeah, we've got a self-referencing tag, yeah, okay. Do you want to tell me about any other Hreflang tags? And the Danish page is like, no. It's like, do you know those guys over there? You ever seen them before? I'm like, no, they're nothing to do with me. So this is problematic, so let's fix that. Much more polite, there we go. And then there's the problem of sites with just no tags at all. I mean, this one's a bit more obvious. But a lot of people assume that if you only have one version of your site, you don't need to have tags. But you do. You should be telling Google and other search engines still what your pages are relevant to. Otherwise, it's like having this sort of conversation with Google. So Google comes along and is like, okay, there's no hreflang on this page. I can tell it's in English, but I'm not really sure if it's particularly supposed to be for one market or another, so I can rank it, but maybe I've not got as much confidence as I could have. So you say, okay, Google, I've added an EN tag to this page now. And so Google's like, great, okay, so you're basically telling me that this page is relevant to global users speaking English with English as their browser language. That's great, okay, that's really useful, thank you. And then like, oh, and I've added an ENGB tag as well now. So I've got two self-referencing tags on this page to tell Google what I'm relevant to. So Google's like, great, got it. So you're especially relevant to English speakers in the UK, but you're also relevant for other English speakers around the world. Great, I know exactly where I should be showing you now. Then there's mismatching tags. So each tag on its own seems valid, but doesn't match up with the other ones on the site. Now, it should be fairly simple to get right if you've only got two versions. So these examples here shouldn't really happen. At the top, very simple. The US page is saying, yeah, over there, that's the UK page. And the UK page is like, no, don't know. And at the bottom here, again, US page is saying, yeah, the equivalent page of me is that UK page over there. And the shoes page for the UK is like, my equivalent page, yeah, that one over there. The one with the pretty pink dresses on, that's the equivalent page for me. And Google's like, I don't think it is. So let's fix that. But it gets more complicated when you've got more than two URLs in your Hreflang cluster. So this one is only 3, and it's already starting to look a little bit more confusing, and there is a mistake in there. I'm not sure if anyone can see it. Let's fix that. So it's much more tricky to spot issues. There are some tools you can use which are really useful, but it's much easier if you start off with a CMS, with a platform where you can map things together. Things like Polylang for WordPress, where you can have one set of pages and then the tags get generated automatically, make your life so much easier than having to create them manually. Other problems we see with mismatching tags is where you have more than one URL for the same tag within a cluster. So problematic British page here again, it's like, yeah, that's the English-speaking US page, and so's that one as well. And Google's just going to be like, well, it's one or the other. You can't have both. What you can do is you can have different tags with the same language in. So you can be like, that's the French version, that's the French-Canadian version, that's the French-Belgian version. That's fine, that's good. We like that. But not the exact same tag. And then we also have maybe sort of the opposite problem, which is where you have multiple tags, and as we've said, multiple tags are fine, but multiple incompatible tags. So you could have, this page is the English global page, it's also English for the UK, and it's also English for Ireland. That's absolutely fine. What you can't do is say, yep, that's the English US page, and it's the Danish page for Denmark. Google's going to be like, no, well, you can't, because it's one language or the other. You've got to choose. The only exception is where you have some macro languages and some sub-languages, There's not that many examples of them. The main one come across would be Norwegian and Norwegian Bokmål, and you can have codes for both of those languages. So let's fix that one. And then if you've got all of those things right, so all of your tags are right, they're valid, you validated them, and you're still finding problems, which is often where kind of people start talking to us because they're pulling their hair out trying to work out what's going wrong. The most common thing we find is that people have canonicals that are disagreeing with the Hreflang. So you can have canonicals on your site still. It's not, you shouldn't use canonicals at all, but you don't need to use canonicals within those clusters pointing to one version. It causes big problems. Otherwise, it's like this. So I am the ENGB page on this site. I've got a canonical. I'm saying, yep, the main version is there. It's the US. You don't need to show me at all. And then Google's like, OK, got it. So I'm not going to index you. I'm going to show the ENUS page everywhere. And then it gets to the ENUS page, and it's like, oh, there's an hreflang tag here saying that that ENGB page is for English speakers in the UK. That's weird. And so then you should be like, OK, yeah, I'm sorry, I got it wrong. I'm going to do a self-referencing canonical to me, the ENGB page. And then Google's like, OK, a little bit concerned. You don't really know how this works. You're a bit of an idiot, but I'm going to think about putting it back in. And usually, if it's your first offense or you haven't made too many mistakes, then it gets fixed within a few weeks. If you're still having problems at this point, it's worth having a look at your lang tags. So lang tags, there's one per page. It's just for that page, not referencing anywhere else. Less important signal than hreflang, but you can cause issues if they're contradictory. So each lang tag should match at least one of the hreflang self-referencing tags and not contradict any of the others. So this example here, we've got lang tag for Danish for Denmark, but yeah, it disagrees with these two, which mention English as a language, so we don't like that. Here, not quite so bad. We've got ENGB at the top, and then there's no ENGB hreflang, so not as bad, but still not ideal. And then finally, yeah, got it fixed at last. ENUS matches this tag, doesn't contradict the other one, so worth checking that as well. Particularly as some sites just seem to automatically add a language code to every single page. Another problem you might have and just not really realize is you've got hreflang tags in more than one place. And sometimes it will be you've got a module that you didn't know existed that's outputting them, say, into the sitemap, and you will only realize that there was some on the page. And they can very easily end up disagreeing with each other. So the easy answer here is have your hreflang tags in one place or the other. There's no advantage or disadvantage to having them on page or in the sitemap, really. But they just need to be in one place and consistent. The other thing to look out for is where sometimes you end up with hreflang tags that are in the source code of your page, and then when the page renders, when scripts run, maybe some more gets generated, and so sometimes when you look at the document object model, the rendered version of the code, you find there's another set of tags in there, and sometimes you'll end up with multiple sets of tags, which, if they disagree with each other, is just going to upset Google. And we don't want to upset Google. So hopefully, at this point, everything's working. Technically, everything's all good. And so Google should start showing the right pages in the right countries to the right users, okay, right? But unfortunately, Google might ignore it anyway. Unfortunately, hreflang, it's a signal. It's not a directive. And so if you had one version that maybe has been established for a long time before you got your hreflang set up, has a great click-through rate, has great link equity, in that case, Google might just carry on ignoring your tags. But more likely what's happening is that you need to give Google time because Google does have some trust issues, I'm afraid. So this is a little bit like the time that your devs managed to point all of your canonical tags to the home page, and so Google just decided not to trust you with canonical tags anymore and make up its own mind. Or the fact that your XML sitemap is only being updated a couple of times a year, and Google have just got fed up with actually bothering to check it, and so they're just going and crawling the site and ignoring it. It takes a while for Google to build up this trust again. So particularly if you've done this, we've had these kind of mistakes across a big chunk of your pages and for a long period of time, Google might need you to really prove to it that you know what you're doing with Hreflang before it actually starts listening to that and listening to where it should be showing different pages. Usually after 6 weeks, after making changes, you'll see updates to where pages are showing. It usually takes about that amount of time anyway. If after that you're still seeing the wrong things coming up in the wrong places, then you might need to give Google a lot longer, and you really need to be on it. You really need to nail it for that time to show Google that you should be trusted again. So, just a few kind of final thoughts from me. Use crawlers like Screaming Frog and Sitebulb. They've got really good tools for doing these checks, particularly for things like finding missing return tags. In Screaming Frog, the tools are a little bit hidden, but yeah, you should be able to use those. And migrations. Migrations are a great opportunity to break your Hreflang if it is working, but they're also a great opportunity to fix your Hreflang if you've had problems in the past. So it is important to plan ahead with your migration, to think about Hreflang as part of that. Make sure you're going to have a platform and a CMS where you can map things in the back end. So if you've got a page, you can map all the different versions of it, and the tags get generated automatically, and they should always be correct as a result. And if you've only got 1 or 2 versions of your site at the moment, think ahead. So make sure when you're migrating, you're thinking about the future when you might be launching into new markets, adding more languages. So make sure you've got a good CMS that'll do a good job of allowing you to do that in a much more manageable way. And lastly, do test these 6 things that we've talked about. Do those checks in staging. Make sure everything's working before the site's allowed to go live. Otherwise, you may upset Google with that. And lastly, if you try all these things and Hreflang's still not working, then get in contact with me, because I like a challenge. I like kind of finding edge cases and finding things where Google should be showing it and trying to work out why. So yeah, get in contact with me in these ways. Also, there's a webinar that I'm doing next Tuesday, so if you'd like to hear even more from me and hear about what organic search might look like in 2024, find that, and that's on my LinkedIn and Twitter at the moment. Thank you very much.
Monthly reporting making you want to shove sharp things up your nose? Try Dragon Metrics, the all-in-one SEO software with mind-blowing reporting tools.